Hello and welcome to the Rover Media's podcast network, The Midnight Choir. We appreciate all your support and we ask you to go check out the work that we do over in the link below, therover.ca/support-us or therover.ca/newsletter. You can check out all the writing that we're doing over there and all the extreme deep dive reporting that we are giving, investigative journalism at its finest. We have a fundraiser on the 28th. Come to it and enjoy time with Chris, myself, and the rest of our staff. We expect to see you there. What is satire? How do you write for it? Well, Clare Blackwood was the one to take me through her journey on how it's done. Maybe satire, humor, and a dash of sarcasm will save Canada. But let's talk about satire. You've been a satire writer for 5 years now.
Yes.
Has it always been with the Beaverton?
Yes, it started mostly with the Beaverton. I've always been a writer, but more like, writing fantasy stuff when I was a teenager. And then I got into, around 2017, I decided to start writing comedy because I really liked it. But political satire, I didn't start really writing until in 2018, and I got hired by the Beaverton. And I was like, oh, yes, this is what I like. This is what I like. I like yelling at politicians and getting paid for it.
Can you give us a rundown of what the Beaverton is?
The Beaverton, I think the best way to describe it is, unfortunately, I still have to describe it like this in Canada, is the Canadian version of The Onion.
Yeah. The Onion's just so big. It's a hard one to bypass, right?
It is, and everybody knows what it is, and I think that's the most succinct way of putting it. And the Beaverton did have a TV show that lasted a couple of years.
Really?
Yeah! I think
idea.
it did, just as I was getting in, which I was always really sad about because I would have loved to have written for the TV show because they had a lot of really, really funny comedians on there.
Oh, really? Canadian comedians, I assume?
Yeah. I mean, Emma Hunter was on there. Miguel Rivas was also co-hosting. Just some of the funniest people, often pulled from Second City or 22 Minutes and that kind of stuff. So
amazing. Yeah. Can you give me your 3 favorite stories that you've written? Doesn't have to be literally your favorite, but 3 of your I am very proud of this hilarious satire that I wrote.
Oh God!
Oh, you're looking yourself up.
I am. Are you kidding?
Claire's looking herself.
I have written hundreds of articles, my friends. Hundreds. Okay. I mean, Ooh.
You can look yourself up. I don't mind.
No, it's okay, but I don't know when it's that time. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I wrote one years ago because I've written so many articles about Trudeau and Doug Ford and Polyev that they all blend together in my brain. So sometimes, often the ones that stick out are unrelated. And so, I wrote one that was the perfect kind of encapsulation of my interests, which was satire and feminism and medieval history. And I wrote I wrote one about I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was chivalry is dead, whines man who's never lorded over his own kingdom, or taking care of peasants, something like that. And it was just this guy who was, he spent his time bitching about how chivalry is dead and he's never actually learned the code of horse conduct. There's that one. I did a Game of Thrones one where it was right after people started making petitions for when the 8th season ended and everybody was so angry about the 8th season ending and they started making petitions to redo it. And I was like, okay, guys, come on. We all need to take a breath and calm down. That's not how that works. And so I think I wrote a piece about the creators of Game of Thrones being go ahead, motherfuckers, try it. See what you got, and it went insanely viral, and because it hit that kind of perfect timing, place, subject matter. Game of Thrones is the biggest thing in the world, and then you know what I'm recently proud of. I had to go on a radio station for this one because I think I made a lot of people mad, but it was the National Post, my dear sweet National Post.
Yeah.
Who, if you know me online, you know just how much I love them. No, I'm going to say I do not because God knows they could use it as a weird soundbite. But this author wrote about how Sydney Sweeney's boobs heralded the age of the death of woke. And I just remember just being what? what is this? What is this? And she has since written a lot of articles that just raise my eyebrow. And so I just wrote this article about 5 ways to use your boobs as weapons in the upcoming woke war. And that was very fun for me.
I remember all these responses. I've been following the Beaverton since day one.
Yeah, right.
It is so exactly my humor. The 2 groups I follow the most online are Beaverton and Hard Times News.
Oh, well, the Hard Times is great. I love the Hard Times. I'm a Clickhole fan.
I've been at Clickhole since day one as well.
They're just so weird. I remember writing a packet for Clickhole once years ago, like in the midst of the main portion of the pandemic, and it was so hard to do. That is so hard to write because it is so nonsensical.
Yeah, it's absurdity.
It's absolute absurdity, and it's really difficult to write that stuff. And so sometimes, without fail, I will read a headline of theirs and just be like, how? How did you come up with something that makes so little sense but is still so funny?
Yeah, because a lot of people think absurdism is just being random. And I remember, like, for a while, Google tried to do a whole bunch of ads with absurdism, and everyone was just like, y'all seem like boomers.
Exactly.
Whereas when you do absurdism right, it's funny and you don't know why.
Yes.
But it's there's something about it. It hits something, a nail on the head. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a term that I used to learn from. I learned from an old Second City teacher who's a brilliant sketch artist in the city, and she might not have come up with it, but she called it like comedy math, and it was just how. It's one of my favorite things to work with when I'm writing, not even just satire, but anything, but a lot of satire because it lends itself well to comedy, and in the sense that the structure of a headline is so important, and you can put so much work into it, and the job, and kind of like you said, the job is to make people feel like you didn't put any work into it, but the number of times I will substitute a word, just a single word, to be like, this isn't right, this isn't funny, and then you find one word that, whether it's like in terms of the number of syllables, or whether it is gross and it contrasts with the rest of the headline, which is, it could be something as easy as throwing a fuck in there in a headline that is otherwise very professional. And if you do it right, you don't think about it. The audience won't think about it, but there's a lot of that kind of math that goes into restructuring and reordering and having the same amount of syllables on one end of the line to the next, or not making sure that you don't, like, your words are varied, and it sounds silly, but there's a lot of thought that go into it. And I have a feeling with Clickhole, it's a lot of that kind of thing.
I bet you're right.
Yeah.
I bet you're right.
And I said that just because I submitted to them, and I was like, this is fucking hard.
Yeah, I believe you. What is your process? How do you start developing a piece?
Yeah, I think it depends on whether it's a political or evergreen piece. I used to write a lot of evergreen. I'm sure most of your listeners probably know this, but it's just like everyday stuff, like observational life things, as opposed to let's talk politics. Not that the two are.
Let's clown on something recent or.
Yeah, exactly. And often, politics is seeped into everything in our lives, but it's I do much fewer pieces about evergreen stuff nowadays. I found that after the pandemic, and I was stuck indoors for 18 months, I was like, I don't have any life. I don't know what to do with this. Like, there's no observations I can make about my life from my junior 1-bedroom apartment. So I stopped kind of doing those. I feel like my tank ran dry on those after doing so long. But for politics, it really just comes from an event. It's just an event that I feel strongly about. And then coming up with as unique an angle as I can, ranging from really stupid to really clever, or even just a terrible pun. It just has to make sure that I feel like it hasn't been done before. And then it's just kind of coming up with, what's the issue? Why do I feel like, how do I feel about it? What's my point of view? And then what things do I know about that person that I can craft a joke around that might not have anything to do with the specific topic at hand. But everybody knows it about them, so you can kind of tie it in and use that angle. And then once you have the headline is coming up with the headline is the hardest part by far.
Right.
And then the jokes just come from there.
Right. So do you react to the news, or do you kind of go in with like something kind of pre-thought out, or do you like? Is it a process that takes you time, or is it usually just off the cuff?
Completely depends. Often when I pitch something, because the beaverton has like a hidden pitch thing for time sensitive stuff, and often something will happen and I'll be like, oh man, I want to write something on that, and I'll toss it around and I'll toss it in our little private file and people will pitch on it and that will help me. And I don't think there's one answer to that. I guess sometimes it's
that's really reasonable.
Sometimes it's immediate. Like I wrote a piece about Andrew Tate, like when Greta Thunberg destroyed him, and I think just immediately I came up with a piece that was like, small dick man still manages to fuck himself.
I remember that one.
Yeah. And that was just, that's the joke. That is the joke right there. And then sometimes it takes me a long time. And a lot of judging and a lot of messing with it. And like I said, the kind of comedy math of it. And often editors will come in and help you with that. A lot of my favorite pieces I've come up with other people kind of being like, instead of that word, use that word, or switch this around, or tighten it up. Things can always be tightened up.
How do you find you balance making a point with making a joke?
The two things to me are kind of interchange. No, they're not mutually exclusive. I think it's all tied into questions of, am I punching down at the right things? And once you have that, and I feel good about what I'm trying to say, then you can just let the jokes go. And something that I think about a lot, which is like, what is the point? Is the point I'm trying to make good? Do I feel good about it? And do I feel like I'm giving the topic the weight it deserves? Because sometimes things will happen and I'm just like, I feel very, very strongly about this, but I also just don't feel like I personally can come up with jokes that would do it justice and gives it the weight that it deserves. And at that point, I just kind of put my hands up and I go, this is probably not my headline. The more I have to worry about it and think about it and all that kind of stuff, I'm just like, there's probably somebody out there who's better for this than me.
Right. So how do you do something that is punching down versus punching up? Because there's a lot of criticism, especially on the right, how they punch down at people. No, they punch down. Yes. Whereas you, in comedy, the rule is you punch up, right? Can you explain punching up, punching down a little bit, and how you figure out what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, punching down is essentially like, you can punch down. I'm all in favor of punching down. It's just, you have to decide what you're punching down at. It basically just means like lifting something up, or literally essentially punching it into the ground, which generally is conceived of as negative. And a lot of times punching down is used in terms of right-wing comedy, where it's just like, this joke is actively harming an LGBTQ community or women or minorities or that kind of thing. And they're using them as scapegoats to make people laugh. Basically, they're just punching down at people. I think when it comes to punching down and punching up, I think entirely for me, it's just about my morals. Like, what do I think is right? And I got to make a choice about it. What do I stand for? What do I believe in? If I believe that trans rights are human rights, which I absolutely do, then I see zero benefit to punching down at their community, and absolutely every benefit to punching down at the politicians and hate groups that make trans lives a living hell. So to me, it's really kind of that easy.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think something that my Beaverton editors kind of drilled into me from the start, which I really liked, because there was a time when I was very eager and I just wanted to make fun of everything, and which, I think is fairly common, and that they were cautious about, if a politician does a good thing, celebrate it for the news for whatever community it affects, and kind of, maybe leave that alone. I will write articles about Doug Ford until he rage quits. You know what I mean? But if he opened up a school for homeless orphans tomorrow, using money that he's taken from the police budget, I'm not going to write a piece making a joke about it just because I can, because it's like, I do believe that we should be, thumbs upping the good decisions, because hopefully public opinion will lead to more good decisions.
So in the case of him using that money, would you write
very
an
likely
article? Yeah, very likely. Doug Ford defunding the police.
Yes.
In order to help children.
Orphans. Yeah.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
No.
The only thing he would defund the police for is to line his own pockets and build more condos for himself. Anyways.
Correct. Just so we're clear. Hello, audience. Neither of us likes Doug Ford.
Doug Ford sucks.
I know if you're listening to this podcast, you might be wondering, but
man, I hope that right-wingers listen to this podcast and they learn something and they're like, Isaac's not so bad, but also if you don't like me, I can't do anything about it.
No.
It doesn't bother me. Nothing bothers me. You're on the internet. You don't exist.
Oh, yeah. That took me a long time to get there, and I'm still not.
Oh, really? Like, how long did it... Because I assume you get a lot of criticism from people because you'll make fun of, like, things that someone's like, well, that's my side. So how do you deal with that criticism?
I have had a long history of dealing with... basically, ever since I started to get the modicum of popularity that I have on Twitter, I've dealt with insane right-wing assholes, and I don't mean to paint them all with that brush. I'm talking about a very specific category here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's once you, like, you know, as somebody I've had like a blog TO article written about me about how much hate, like how much cyberbullying I was getting last year for making like the lamest joke about Pierre Poilievre. The lamest,
really?
But it was just because fucking Jonathan Kay got a hold of it, which caused Canada Proud to get a hold of it. And then all of a sudden I had to privatize all of my stuff and I was getting death threats and Nazis messaging me on Facebook. So, I mean, it's once you get that, there's really not much that I care about from the right. Like now it's just I've developed a much more healthy way. I used to read the comments. Don't read the comments.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Even if they're good. Like I have a rule that if I make a political joke on Twitter and I see more than about 50 comments, I walk away. away.
Oh, it's a cesspool.
It's a cesspool.
It's instantly a cesspool.
Yes, and I personally have a lot of ethical qualms about remaining on there, but that's a whole other conversation.
Of course,
but it's just I've learned the art of ignorant bliss because I already know what people are saying, and I don't care that it's not worth my time. If you're somebody who I'm happy to talk to you, if we have differing political views, I think it's really important.
I think it's very important.
It's very important.
Face to face.
But if your reaction to me posting, a lame joke about Poilievre is coming onto my page being like, die, bitch, die, I'm not, I don't think we're going to have a sensical dialogue from there, nor do I want to. No. And so I don't care. If anything, I care more about criticism from the people who I wish to be a part of. Because I've absolutely been called out on stuff before. Yeah, absolutely. I've been called in. I've been called out for stuff. I try to do my best to learn because I absolutely acknowledge that I have my blind spots and I try to be aware of them. We're not perfect. That's basically, I just stopped caring about right-wing trolls.
I agree with you when it comes to online stuff. Don't look at the comments, good or bad. It either fluffs you up, and it's just reinforcing something, or it's insane, and it's usually insane on both sides. And I'm like, when you talk to someone face to face, you could probably talk to the person who posted that tweet face to face, and they would be a freaking normal person. But for some reason online, they turn into psychopaths. Yeah,
it's groupthink and anonymity sometimes, and it's a whole bunch of stuff. And the fact that the website is run by a Nazi supporter at this point has emboldened people significantly. And
absolutely. So how in that case do you decide your targets for satirizing? How do you decide whether it's crossing a line or not? And how do you decide whether it is a line that you will or will not cross?
I think when I just decide what topics I want to do, I think it's a gut reaction for me. It's an emotional reaction. It's just, most of the pieces I write are like, oh, I just need to write about this. I need to, there's been times where I will message an editor being like, this is mine. This is mine. Please give it to me. Let me write about this. It doesn't matter if it's a serious topic or an unserious topic. Like I remember with the Sydney Sweeney's woke boobs, I was like, this is mine. I claim it. I need this. Please give this to me. And it's also, I look at it as in terms of how hard is it for me to come up with a headline? If I spend too much time, maybe, like I said, it's not for me. But I think everybody's worth satirizing. And I know a couple of the questions get into that a little bit later. But I think everybody can be satirized. It's just a question of who gets to do it. Like most comedy, I believe. And in terms of lines, I think it's a personal question. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's all about who I'm willing to punch up or down with and why. It's the same as any comedy. Does it make me feel gross? I'm not going to do it. Like, do I feel like, is this going to be affecting the right people? Great. But I generally have a fairly solid internal gut reaction now where I'm like, this doesn't feel right to me. This joke doesn't feel right to me. This headline doesn't feel right to me. And I wish that I could be more specific about what that is, but it's just 5 years of doing this.
What's your main goal personally in writing satire? Is it to criticize, or is it to be funny? Or is it both? It can be both.
It's both. I think satire, by its very nature, is both. I think I have thoughts about the effectiveness of satire sometimes. And so I think for me, it's more on the let's make people laugh side, because I think we're in a period of time where we're like, oh my God, just please make me laugh. Please.
Yeah, we need laughs.
Yes. And so I think it is very important, but I also think laughing is very important. And so to me right now, it's very much a blend of the two, but I don't think you can extricate the two from each other. Mm-hmm. But I just really want to make people laugh. I'm in a place in my career, I'm just like, that's what I want to give people. I'm not a journalist. I don't have the balls for that. I don't have the spine for that. I would cry.
It sounds like you dealt with more bullying than a lot of journalists have.
Yes, maybe, but I also I think good journalists, what they do is so important, and it sounds exhausting and demoralizing, and it just sounds so hard. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather sit behind my computer and make some jokes, and make a little joke about Pierre Polyev, and I will do that to the day is long. But so I respect reporters a lot. So if I can be the person making the jokes and make people laugh, and also giving them something to think about, then that's good for me. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. How do you think that satire differentiates itself from just criticizing someone?
Oh God, jokes. I mean, it's
just funniness.
No, it's not. It's not just funniness, but the whole point of satire is to take a criticism and then meld it in a way that maybe makes you think it's going one way and then it takes it another. And so I think maybe it can cause you to look at your internal biases about an issue from a different perspective. Whereas straightforward criticism, which is also super important, it's just like, this is why this is wrong. And sometimes I think that doesn't work for people. I don't think people like being criticized. They don't.
Why do you say that?
Who likes being criticized?
I definitely think it is an enjoyable, I learn a lot from being criticized.
Well, congratulations. You're better than all of us.
I don't think that makes me better. I think it makes me a little weird.
No. I'm not, I think, yes, constructive criticism is great, but nobody wants to hear that they're wrong or they're bad or they're doing bad things. And often criticism, as it should, does that. Right. And I think sometimes satire can, this makes it sound so lame, but I think it can soften the blow sometimes. and go, oh, that made me laugh. Oh, also, yeah, that's right.
Good point.
That's true. I'm going to share this because it's not a 4,000 word article, that no one's going to read.
Yeah. So do you think then it has the potential to be more poignant than traditional journalism?
I think it's easier to gain people's attention than traditional journalism, I believe, because it tends to be shorter and punchier and funnier.
Right.
I think it depends on how deep the point you want to make is. Like, yes, I could write a 300-word piece about the hypocrisy of Canada's treatment of the genocide in Gaza. I could. I'm not going to. But I guarantee you that nothing I could ever hope to write would be more effective in making a point about that than good, unbiased reporting. Because there's just some things that can't be said in 300 words. And you can make a surface level point, but if you actually want to get down to the nitty gritty, there's, like I said, you can make comedy about anything, but I think it's good for sharing. I think in this age of social media where our attention spans are 15 seconds and then we're moving on, I think it's useful for that and it's more effective for that because people will just share and share and share and share and share. And you can get that little kernel of comedic truth out to more people than, but
and you weren't banned from Meta.
Oh yeah, that's we weren't. Yes, because we're not news.
Because you're not news.
We're not news.
There's a Beaverton article about that.
I have a quote from that on a Beaverton shirt.
That's incredible. I laughed so hard. It was like, we're not news, so we're still here.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's like they're one of my favorite articles. I think it's Luke's, and it was about Jordan Peterson having to go to social media camp, and it was something like, "There's no college of satirists, so we can just call Jordan Peterson a little bitch without."
I died at that. That one was so good.
Without getting
yes. I laughed so hard.
It's great.
Okay, so one of the reasons we wanted to do this interview with you was because a lot of people, they love clowning on the United States political atmosphere. But how is our political climate as funny as the States? Because the States, it seems like an absurdist TV show in real time. And Canada doesn't seem like that, but I think the ineptitude of our politicians is quite fun to clown on. So how does it compare writing for someone like satire about the States versus here?
Yeah, I think we have so much material. We have so much material here. And I can rant for hours about how we do not have a late night show in Canada and how it pains me every day. And all I want to do is create one. It's my deepest hope that someday I can create a show that draws more attention to the politics in Canada. I think we've been inundated for years with like the absolute fuckery on the southern border that our politics, in comparison, our politics seems fairly tame. If you're like a straight white middle class person who doesn't have to suffer the effects of anything that our politicians are doing, and which a lot of us are. And so it's really easy for us to be like, oh, well, our politics doesn't matter. Yes, of course it matters. But we don't pay attention to it. Of course it does.
Oh, absolutely.
And, at a certain point, like, it is difficult to pay attention to, say, the intricacies of Bill C-11 when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is telling people that he has brain worms and putting dead bear carcasses in Central Park to make it look like an accident. Like, yes, you can't compete with that. Wild. It's nuts. It's nuts. But, we do have 22 minutes, which does its best to, talk about our politics. I wish it were meaner. But then that's just me.
We need a Jon Stewart in Canada.
Yes, and I made a late night show during the early years of the pandemic, and it was great. And I've wanted to do it ever since. We need a Jon Stewart. We need a John Oliver, and preferably not somebody whose name starts with J. And not a Jimmy. But yes, I think you can always make fun of everything, and especially right now, especially with the rise of Polyev and the ineptitude of the leaders of our other parties and how they are not handling this whole thing. We absolutely need people in Canada to be able to speak truth to power on this. And there's always comedy to be mined. I think we just need to believe it. And we also just need to pay attention. We need to kind of drag ourselves out of this obsession that we have with US politics. And that
I don't understand that. I've never understood that.
Well, I get it on one level. It's just what I was just talking about. It's close, and it's also just they are a much more they are a nation of extremes more than we are a lot of times. So again, why would you pay attention to the sparkler up here when they're out fucking shooting fireworks?
Right
on the southern border. Like it's. But I think it's just a question of. What are my biases? Why do I find this entertaining? Why is this much more interesting to me than bills that actually affect the people around me? And I'm sure I can make jokes about those, but again, it's also what gets clicks, I think.
Right.
And what gets clicked is often not very, the stuff that's important is often not as interesting. And so people don't write about it.
Yeah. What is interesting about writing satire in Canada, would you say?
I think for me, it's allowed me to learn more about the issues and the politicians that I've always been a reasonably political person, but it wasn't until I started doing this and really kind of delving into it that it's been fun to educate myself and look at things from a different perspective. I don't think it's necessarily any different from writing comedy in any other country. I don't even know. I don't know if it is. We have a different set. We have our own different morals and way of doing things and the way that we lean politically. But at the end of the day, making fun of politicians is making fun of politicians. And we're lucky to be able to do it, to live in a country that allows us to make fun of our politicians. I just, speaking truth to power is speaking truth to power. And it's just not to aggrandize satire like that, but you can make a joke about anything. And I think sometimes you just need to do a little bit more research in Canada because we engage in a little bit less insanity, maybe. But then sometimes the leader of the Conservative Party comes out of a trailer with the Diagolon sign on the side. And we're like, oh, yes, okay.
Yeah.
That's easy.
I mean, Poilievre is really interested in the far right.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah.
And we got to make fun of that guy. I think that the best way to deal with far right people is actually to tease them. They don't handle it well.
Are you saying they're weird?
I am saying they're weird. And I think that if we need to basically just start calling people like Poilievre like a numpty or something like that, because he's a weenie. I think if we started calling him like Weenie Poilievre or something like that, I think he would like really dislike that and it would seriously bother him. And I think he's a giant weenie. I really do. He's
absolutely the guy who got shoved into a locker in high school and never got over it.
He totally is.
Like, I truly believe that man, if he didn't get wedgied a lot, he should have. I don't advocate for bullying, but sometimes I look at Pierre and I'm like, we could have bullied you a little bit more.
I think we need to bring back some like more institutional bullying. Like when I was in high school, there was no... what is it called when you first arrive somewhere? Like in a
hazing?
University or school. Hazing. There was no hazing. There was none. It was so peaceful. And I just think like I could have benefited from that. Like I might be a more humble person.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I'm obviously kidding.
No.
People.
No, don't bully people. However,
bully Pierre Poilievre. I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
No, it's online. I'm gonna post it. I'm not even gonna edit it out.
I'm really curious as to see how the weird discourse that is currently flooding the states now that, the Democrats have got the balls to do it, finally.
Yeah.
I will be curious to see whether that translates up here.
Yeah.
I'm undecided. I don't know. I don't know if calling Pierre Poilievre a weenie is going to do anything to change his support. Like, I don't think it's going to change his support because it's different.
Real. His support is mostly people who just don't want to vote for Trudeau.
Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't make it any less dangerous.
Right. Yeah. It's really sad because you're like, use that vote, give it to the NDP. Why don't you just vote for the NDP? Like, I don't understand. Yeah. Y'all, there's other options. We live in a multi-tiered democracy. We're not like the States here. You can vote for other people.
Yeah, I know. And, do I think the leader of the NDP is good? No, I don't. But I would rather him than Pierre Poilievre. But I think we've very much made up our minds that Trudeau needs to go. Again, whole other separate conversation. And Poilievre is the guy.
Which is sad. It's too bad.
It is. I'm very alarmed.
But we need NDP, new leadership in the NDP. So
yes,
it's like
my God,
both.
We need an NDP leader who does not wear like $5,000 suits to press conferences when you're the leader of.
He looks really good.
Oh, he looks so good.
He looks really good.
Come on, man, you gotta be smarter than that. You can't wear your Rolexes.
With his. Yeah, I agree, but he matches his turbans and he matches his suit, and I'm like, dude, you look so fire.
You're being facetious, right?
No, I think it looks so fucking good.
But
I also think he's supposed to be there for the poor, and then
like the hypocrisy of that is just staggering. And to me, it just says that he doesn't know what his party's about.
Yeah, I agree with you, but still, I'm not somebody who like I can look at somebody terrible and be like, but you look good. And I know a lot of people. But
I can tell you that Justin Trudeau is an attractive man.
Justin Trudeau is in fact a very handsome man. Yeah,
we got a hot prime minister.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that we can't disagree with his policies.
Do you remember when Aaron O'Toole tried to be a sexual image?
I have blacked that out. Thank you.
The Beaverton wrote articles about that.
I'm gonna have to do some work about that now because I forgot about that.
Going to therapy. I'm so sorry. He was like doing the Putin thing where he was like on a horse. I don't know.
Oh God! I mean, like Poilievre just did the same thing. All of a sudden,
did he actually?
No, but he's doing. They took off his glasses and they put him in baby shirts, like shirts for literal babies. That's how that. Like his shirts are so tight now. You can see his nipples. Like, they're so
Yeah, you're right. I have noticed that recently. I've been
because people called him a weenie. And now they're like, oh, God, now we need to make him look like an overcompensating weenie.
Man, the conservative leaders we have devolved into satire in this conversation. Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed that. This has become satire.
Yeah. Welcome to my life.
Can we protect democracy with satire? Is it because it is speaking truth to power? So, like in that case, is this kind of conversation you're writing? Does that protect democracy? Does that protect our freedoms? What do you think?
I don't want to give myself that power, nor do I think I'm that important.
Interesting.
I think the existence of satire implies as healthy a democracy as you can, because there are some countries that you can't make fun of politicians. You'll die. You'll get killed. So I think it is indicative of a healthier democracy. I don't think Trudeau is reading the Beaverton and making policy decisions based on our articles.
Of course.
I don't think that if Poilievre decided to all of a sudden become a dictator, he's going to read my piece about him and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't. Oh, maybe that's bad. I think calling out politicians for what they do is very important, and I think we should keep doing it, whether it's through satire or whether it's through journalism. I guess my answer would be yes, but it's one small part, and it's certainly not the most important part.
Okay.
But it is important.
Okay.
I don't think satire is going to be saving democracy, but I think it's a small brick in the wall of things that hold democracy up.
Is satire innately partisan, or is it innately centrist?
Yeah, I don't think it can be centrist by nature.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think it can, because I think good satire revolves around a strong point of view. And if you don't have a strong point of view on an issue, you're probably not writing good comedy. I always like to think that if something I've written, a piece of comedy that I've written, appeals to everybody, I haven't done my job. And I have not tried hard enough. I think very seldom is the point of view of like both sides of this issue are exactly the same, and I completely agree with both of them, and they're both equally bad or good. That's boring, and I think that's often dangerous. And so, we can argue about, whether right-wing satire is a thing or whether it's very good, but I think by nature of satire's core ideology of having an opinion about something, I don't think it can be centrist. Like, you're saying something, you're making fun of something that is inherently political and that is inherently a centrist.
Because you're taking a shot at something, therefore it has to have an opinion.
Absolutely.
Right. What about evergreen stuff?
Oh, sure. I mean, like the number of cat articles I've written for the Beaverton, or
right. That would be apolitical because it's about a cat.
Everyone loves cats, unless you don't like cats, in which case we can get very political up in here. But or being a restaurant server. Not everything is political. A lot of things are political. But, I wouldn't ever call somebody who felt like about cats, I wouldn't be like, you're a cat centrist. That would be a weird thing to say.
You're a cat centrist.
That'd be a weird thing to say.
It would be. Yeah.
Like, you're allowed to be apathetic about things. But I don't, yes, evergreen pieces, there are definitely evergreen pieces that have political undertones. But I would argue, if you look at those, they'll have a point of view. And they won't actually be centrist.
Right. How do you react to satire like the Babylon Bee then? You as a writer, because they love the one joke. I don't know if anyone's not in the LGBTQ community. They just are the right wing. We call it the one joke, and it's when you say it's a joke such as, "Well, I identify as an attack helicopter." Yeah, that's the one joke. And so anyone in the LGBT community, we clown on it constantly because we're like, y'all. That's it? That's all you got?
That's what you got. Okay, cool. Oh, good. And another identity headline.
And if you've never read The Babylon Bee, I don't recommend it.
Congratulations.
They are pretty much the one joke. That is their thing.
Yes. And like once every 6 months, they'll come out. It's the clock is, a broken clock is right twice a day. Very, very seldomly, The Babylon Bee will come out with something that you're like, okay, but is the absolute outlying, you're like, how did they sneak that in? And just in terms of the writing satire, I think it's so hard to do. And I think I'm going to try to make sure I don't conflate satire with comedy, because I think they're the same, but they're not. Okay.
Satire is kind of a genre of comedy.
It is a genre of comedy. And I think I always love recommending this video because I love this YouTube channel called Some More News.
I love Some More News.
Yeah. And I got into it with a video called something like, Why is Conservative Comedy Not Very Good? And it was an hour and a half of the host just kind of breaking down that point. And I think to do effective satire, you actually have to look at the truth of an issue and then sway and meld it in a funny way. And considering so many people on the right, and they'll get mad at me for this, I don't give a fuck. They're perfectly happy to ignore the truths of things like science and climate change and how gay people deserve rights, and how you can't make informed satire if you're starting from a base of untruth. Because you have to see the world as it actually is in order to make fun of it. And otherwise, if you're not doing that, you're stuck with pronoun jokes. Because there are conservative comedians. Like, that's the thing. There are conservative comedians who are very, very popular and very famous, and they've done good work.
Right.
It's just they're not going around being like, homeless people don't deserve rights, pronouns. Like, it's and they're more, and I feel like if you're more interested in getting people angry than you are about making a point, which so often the right is, you're never going to do comedy successfully. It's just going to be angry and vindictive.
Yeah, if your point is just rage bait, it's not great satire.
Yeah, like I never write my political articles being like, this is going to trigger the Pierre stance. Like, that's so boring. It's boring. I would like that. That's not a point to me. That the point of people are going to react strongly to this. Okay, cool. What else you got? Like, what are you actually trying to say?
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's really frustrating because like a great example of an amazing right-wing comedian was Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, the man's quite conservative, but have you watched Seinfeld? Holy goodness, that is a great show.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you not like Seinfeld?
I've never watched Seinfeld. It's not.
No,
really
that's
my
okay.
thing.
It's probably. I mean, I'm only 29, but it's probably before your time.
How old do you think I am?
Like 27.
Oh, bless.
How old are you?
I'm 36.
What?
This
is unfair.
I win. You'll need to edit that point out. No, I'm kidding. I do moisturize.
Wait, I'll edit that out.
I'm kidding. No. You do not have to cut that out.
I'm writing in my footnotes, age is just a number.
Moisturize.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Moisturize.
Retinol. Just started using it.
How are you 36 and not seen Seinfeld IRL? That's strange.
I went.
That's like saying you have never watched The Simpsons. Have you watched The Simpsons?
I have watched The Simpsons. There's a lot of stuff that I just missed out on. Like, I never watched Friends.
That's fine. Friends.
I'm not a
Friends
huge sitcom person. I've never been a huge sitcom person.
All right.
Justin, I'm sorry. Is this over? Is this podcast episode over?
No.
Are you mad at me?
No, I'm just disappointed.
Oh, that's even worse.
Okay, but you love The Simpsons, right?
Yeah.
All right.
It's great. No, I do. I love The Simpsons. I'm not going to lie. I haven't watched all 2,000 seasons of The Simpsons.
No, I'm only talking about the first 9 seasons.
Yeah, sure. It was great. I think about the Cape Fear. I think about the Cape Fear episode frequently.
The rake jokes?
Yes. The Gilbert and Sullivan HMS Pinafore. Brilliant.
It's so good.
Brilliant. Perfect episode of television.
Yeah, that is a perfect episode of television. And also the peak satire, like invented. Mm-hmm. But that's an example of how satire can truly change society. Mm-hmm. Because that show was the most popular show in all of North America for 10 years. Yep.
And I think that's where satire can be really good. Is that unlike trying to force your uncle at Christmas to read this 3,000 word article on, the effects of climate change. Satire is really, really good at inserting itself into TV, film, songs, media, where you don't even know that you're consuming it, and it can sway your opinion whether you know that it's doing it or not.
Yeah.
And then I think that, the opposite of that is sometimes I'll watch left wing, same as right wing, but I think it's more overt to me when the left wing does it because it just feels so, where you can tell when leftist comedy is made for only left wing people.
I hate it's propaganda.
I'm looking at you. Don't look up. You piece of garbage.
I hated that movie.
As you should.
As a piece of satire, it is trash. It's not satire. I guess it's satire.
It is satire. It's the worst kind of satire. It's Adam McKay staring into the camera and jerking off about how funny he is and how liberal he is, and going, "Aren't I smart? Like, aren't I smart? Please tell me I'm smart."
In the right.
Yes,
You're
exactly.
Like, man.
It was egregiously irritating to me.
Like that's what Fox News does, except with the news. You don't need to do this. Like,
you don't need to do this. What like? Who are you trying? Like, if we're just trying to make ourselves look smart in front of our friends and family who already believe everything that we're doing, then like, what's the point?
Yeah. If this is about ego, you're not an ally.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think
that is one of the challenges with online discourse, and I'm sure you've seen it. The white people canceling n'importe qui when they're just like, hey, like, it's like, yo, like, I don't know if it's you who gets to cancel that person for saying something about a black person. Like, I'd say it's probably black people who should choose who gets canceled for those kind of things. I'd say you're doing the white thing here. Where you're
doing the white thing. I remember because one of my favorite movies, I think my favorite comedy movie of all time is Tropic Thunder. And
I haven't seen it, but I know it's considered like peak. Hey, you have nothing to say.
Okay. No. But like, I remember because obviously Robert Downey Jr. plays a character who does blackface through the entire thing.
Yeah, the last acceptable blackface.
Yeah, sure. But like, but the thing is that when that movie came out, as far as I know, and you know what I mean? I'm sure that I've missed some things, but for the most part, the people who were getting upset about it were just white people.
Of course.
Like, you can't do that. Like, I've never met, and I, again, come from a very small white town. I've never met a black person who was like, fuck that movie. Like, everybody gets it. They get what they were trying to do because it's smart comedy.
Yeah.
But we're really good at speaking for other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And we feel it's our like duty. It's like, okay.
It's white guilt. It's white guilt.
It's white guilt. And, there's the complicated question of like, when you're male and you see a dude being weird towards a woman, you're like, do I say something? Mm-hmm. Like, it's always, it's a hard toss up. And like, it's hard. My rule goes to, if it gets dangerous, yes. Mm-hmm. If I'm seeing like an actual like aggression start to come on, but mostly I'm like, well, she can handle herself, like. Yeah. But at the gym, you see that. I mean, oh my God, it's like, ugh.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I mean, it's all subjective and it's all very personal.
It's
and,
tough.
I've definitely had guys come up, like complete strangers, and pull me out of a weird, uncomfortable situation, and I'm like, great, thank you, that's awesome. Not everybody's gonna feel like that, and that's just humanity,
right? And it also depends on the scenario, like
absolutely.
Yeah, it's complicated, but Twitter canceling someone on behalf of somebody else is like, it's a little weird. And could be done better.
It's exhausting.
Y'all. Yeah, it's exhausting.
We need to stop. Let people speak for themselves, and then let them tell you if they would like you to help speak for them.
Yeah,
I think.
Totally. They probably will.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think the satire that works best is it's written to sway people's mind. It's written to start a conversation. And I'm not saying something like the Beaverton is the best for this, but satire can be so useful. I mean, sometimes the Daily Show will have people on that the host doesn't agree with, and they will have a conversation. And you'll hear both sides of the issue, whether or not you agree with either of them. Like, I remember the Daily Show, Jon Stewart's back, and he had Bill O'Reilly on the show, and like, fucking hate each other half the time.
Oh, really?
And they've had their issues. And I remember, watching it being like, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know, this is kind of weird having Bill O'Reilly on the show. But I listened to the conversation; it was interesting.
Some people, I advocate for. I want people who I absolutely fundamentally disagree with on the Rovers podcast here. Mm-hmm. But Chris feels complex about it because he's like, are we platforming them?
That's kind of how I feel about it. And again, I'm very happy to have that conversation
Yeah.
But it's
a tough conversation, isn't it?
It's a tough conversation because you don't want to give them that platform and make them feel like their views are acceptable. Because sometimes it's just not.
Are you legitimizing what they're saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Like, could you not have had somebody else on better? But you also want to make sure that you're not just sitting in your little echo chamber and not getting other opinions. But I think there's a difference between other opinions and then letting like a Nazi on and talking to them about their Nazi views.
Yeah, there is a degree of how far someone has gone. Like if somebody's just like, oh, I'm a Mitt Romney conservative, I'm a true blue centrist conservative in Canada. You're like, oh, okay. Like, that's
all right,
not a problem.
Let's talk about how you can be a fiscal conservative and social liberal. Let's talk about how you think that's possible.
Exactly. Where you're like, whereas I wouldn't invite someone from Diagolon on.
No.
Just wouldn't.
You'd be legitimizing their views.
Yeah, I would, whereas I would talk to somebody from the Conservative Party of Canada. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's you're choosing your audience based, you're choosing your guests based on like, do you actually think that we can have a proper conversation about this?
And an important one, like, do I think there's benefits? And that's the same with satire, I assume, where you're like, I got to make a joke. Does this actually benefit anyone, or is this just cutting people down?
Well, that's the thing. And so like, that's what I always have to ask myself, which is this just being mean for mean's sake?
Yeah.
Am I the right person to be writing this? And if either of those answers are no, then I'd rather not make the joke at all.
Do you think satire is in a healthy place right now?
Oh, that's an overarching question. I don't even know if I can answer that. I mean, I'm in my little corner of satire. I think it's getting harder. I think it's getting harder to write.
Why? Because life is satire?
Yes. More and more things are happening that honestly make, us writers at the Beaverton sit back and go like, what the fuck can we even do with this? Like the other day, Doug Ford opened a vet clinic and then joked that overcrowded Ontario hospitals could send their patients there for like MRIs.
That is the article. That is the article.
A year ago, that's the headline we would have written. And now it's just happening. I find more and more things are coming out that every day I'm reading a headline that I'm just like, is this no, that's just real life now. It is really hard to go harder than that. What do you even do with that?
What do you do with that?
I don't know. It just, and part of that's just, it pushes you to be smarter. It pushes you to find a different angle. And there's always a different, smarter angle that you can hit.
There's a politician here. He's the Prime Minister of Quebec. The Premier of Quebec, sorry.
I was like, is there something about Quebec that I don't know?
Sorry, in French you say Premier Ministre.
Oh, d'accord.
Yeah. And so he's the Premier of Quebec. And he said a little while ago, and I quote, 100% of our problems with housing are due to immigrants. And you're like, that would have been a joke. That could have been a joke. No one says the quiet part out loud, but now everyone says the quiet part out loud. And usually satire was about like making fun of the quiet part that wasn't said.
Yes.
But people are saying the quiet part.
Yes. So where do you go from there?
Yeah. So where do you go from there?
That's a solid question. I'll let you know when I know. I mean,
still figuring that one out.
Yeah. I mean, it's just finding what's beyond the quiet part.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to blow it up again.
Right.
Like maybe you need to make it bigger. There's always an angle you can hit. They're making our jobs hard, but that's not an excuse for finding a different angle. It's really point. I think it's really easy to make jokes. It's really easy to make okay jokes. But sometimes things like this happen and you're like, okay, this is real life now. This is real life. This is what they're saying. So I have to be better.
Right. You just have to be smart. You have to react more efficiently and think of the joke that you can find in there. How much time do you have? How much time do you have left? Because we're at an hour now.
I have about 25 minutes before I have to go to work.
Yes. What can satire not address?
I don't think the answer is anything, to be honest. I think it's, like I said before, I think it's just a matter of who's writing about the issue and why and for whom. I think with regular comedy, there's always a way to make a joke about it. It's just finding what to punch up at and what to punch down at. Like, I don't think, like I said, before, I don't think a Beaverton article is going to get Trudeau reelected or start a left-wing populist revolution. But, I think you can always find the person to write the joke. And if there isn't a person in your organization who can write that joke, then that's something you need as an organization need to be aware of and go, oh, maybe we need to hire people who can write those jokes.
Yeah.
Because,
right, so
I have a trans friend, and we were literally just talking about it the other day, and they were saying, they're like, there are really funny trans jokes.
Dude, yes, there's.
I'm not going to make them.
Jokes.
I'm probably not going to make them, but I maybe I could. But I'm like, why would I want to make jokes about a trans person? Why is that there are people who can do it better. There are people who can be funnier about it, and they will be coming at it from a more lived experience than I will ever have. So why would I even want to do that? So I think when you ask, like, are there any issues that satire can't address? I think the answer is no. I just think it depends on who's doing it.
How does satire make money?
I mean, I guess it just depends on what you're talking about, right? So, I mean, if you look at in the States, Colbert will run forever. Last week tonight will run until HBO kills John Oliver for getting them sued too much. Like, all of these shows are massively popular. I can't speak to the financials behind them. I have no idea. Right. I think institutions like that will stick around for a while until governments get rid of them. I think you can't be online on Twitter without knowing that, people like Pierre will defund the CBC and defund 22 Minutes and turning the building into it was weird sex dungeon. I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. No, I'm just saying, like, it'll depend on the governments in power and where they want to put their money. I think in terms of places like the Beaverton, I think it depends on ads. It depends on people donating to a Patreon. I think you just have to, if you build it, they will come kind of thing, where it's like, are you making things that people want to support financially? I think that's on you, and you have to do that work. I think there's definitely money in satire, just like there's money in anything. You just have to make people want to pay for it.
Yeah. How do you deal with satire versus fake news in 2024? Because it could be easily construed as such. You could argue. If you have no media literacy.
I guess so, but, like, why are you catering to those people? I don't know. Yes, maybe it could be construed, but I would argue that there's not much that you can do to control people interpreting it as such if that's what they want to do.
Right.
Like, if somebody reads my article about Trudeau eating babies at a campaign rally and legitimately announces that it's fake news, I mean, that's on them. That's on them. I'm not going to worry about that.
Trudeau, why would you do that?
Why would he do that? Because he's a baby eater.
He's a baby.
He's a baby eater. I just
eater.
Like, the idea of conflating fake news with satire is just, I guess, in the eye of the beholder. And to be perfectly honest, if I'm doing my job well, I'm not worried about it. Like, satire is meant to entertain and bring at least a modicum of awareness to a subject, even if the POV on that subject is super silly or something that you don't agree with. Fake news is meant to spread misinformation and harm. The fundamental reasons for them existing are so violently opposed that if you construe them as the same thing, I don't know. I kind of feel like that's not on me to parse.
How do you feel about people who spread misinformation, like trolls, like neo-Nazi Elon Musk, and then he's like, but it's just satire. It's just absurdism. How do you react to that?
I think they're little bitches. They
can't face up to their own opinion.
No, I mean, and that is such a core tenet of right-wing comedy, which is, oh, are you triggered? Oh, I'm just trolling. Oh, I'm just making a joke. Like they often can't stand behind their own opinions because they know, I think in their heart, that they're wrong. Not all of them, but I think a lot of them are coming from a place of hate and confusion, and they're lashing out. And then when they realize that people are mad, it's like, oh no, I was just making a joke. I was just making a joke. And it's like, well, you know that what you said is hurtful. Whether or not you care or not, that's up to you. Whether you have the balls to
own that, man. Own that.
Own it. I'd almost respect that more. I might not agree with you, but at least you're standing behind what you've written. I'll stand behind anything I've written.
Yeah.
And I'll also acknowledge the fact that I might be wrong about it.
Yeah, happy to admit I'm wrong. Also happy to fight you on the fact that I think I'm right, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have something to say it to my face, bitch.
From your keyboard.
Yeah, I think anyone who fights with people online is kind of a bitch anyways, but I shouldn't say that. Chris does that so much.
Yeah.
My boss, he's on Twitter, he's just like, fuck you, and I'm like, don't do that.
I mean, I think you can. I have a certain level of respect for people fighting the good fight.
Keyboard warrior,
but I think there's a benefit to seeing people fight for causes that maybe they're not personally affected by publicly.
Good point. You just absolutely destroyed my argument. I'm going to be frank.
Like, I'm not saying that all internet arguing is good. It's not. I generally, for the most part, don't engage in it. I like to just throw a little thing and then walk away because I think I don't want to deal with the people who are going to be so violently opposed to this. Like, that's not going to be a fun conversation. But I do think that people who have privilege in society, I think they have a responsibility, and they might disagree with me on this. I think we have a responsibility to prop up people who don't. And I think maybe that responsibility is shouldering some of the emotional burden of dealing with these assholes, whether it's online or not. And so sometimes I'm sure it can, and even for myself, who is a cis white woman, like, I have a lot of privilege. There are people who have more than me. And sometimes it's really nice to see the men in my life stick up for me publicly. It's nice. It makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel supported, which can help you keep doing the thing that you're doing.
There you have it. Claire was a delight, was hilarious, and we cracked more jokes than I think any other Midnight Choir episode. I was glad to share this moment with you, and I hope you enjoyed yourselves. For now, I'll see you next week.